My son and his wife came to my house with paperwork and smiles. They needed me to co-sign their mortgage, $400,000. They said it was my chance to help them build their dream home, where my grandchildren would grow up. When I hesitated, my daughter-in-law leaned forward and said something I'll never forget. Real grandmas don't say no to their grandchildren's future. Like saying no made me a bad grandmother. Like my signature on their debt was a requirement of loving my family. I looked at that mortgage application, at the fine print that would make me responsible if they couldn't pay, and I said the word she told me real grandmas don't say. Before the story begins, subscribe and tell me where you're watching from. My name is Sylvia. I'm 69 years old, and I'm about to tell you about the day my daughter-in-law tried to manipulate me into co-signing a mortgage I couldn't afford. Preston is my son, 36 years old, married to Juliet for 8 years. They have 2 children, Emma, who's 6, and Lucas, who's 4. I love those grandchildren more than anything. I see them every week, take them for ice cream, read them bedtime stories when I babysit, buy them birthday presents and Christmas presents and just because presents. I'm a good grandmother. I know I am. But apparently, according to Juliet, real grandmas do more than that. Real grandmas co-sign mortgages. Let me back up. Preston and Juliet have been renting for their entire marriage. Nice apartments. Nothing fancy, but comfortable. 2 bedrooms, then 3 bedrooms after Lucas was born. About a year ago, they started talking about buying a house. The market's crazy right now, Preston told me over Sunday dinner, but we think we're ready to buy. That's wonderful, sweetheart. Have you been saving for a down payment? Yeah, we've got about $40,000 saved. Not a lot, but it's a start. $40,000. 10% down on a $400,000 house. Not terrible, but not great either. What's your budget? I asked. Preston and Juliet exchanged a look. We're approved for up to $450,000. I nearly choked on my wine. Approved for doesn't mean you should spend that much. We know, Mom, but houses in good school districts are expensive. We want Emma and Lucas to grow up somewhere nice. Good schools, safe neighborhood, a yard to play in. Of course you do, but make sure you're not stretching yourselves too thin. We won't. We're being smart about it. Over the next few months, they house hunted. I'd hear updates. This one was too small, that one was too expensive. Another one needed too much work. Then in March, they called. Excited. They'd found the perfect house. Mom, you have to come see it, Preston said. 4 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, big backyard, great school district, everything we wanted. How much? $425,000. More than they'd said they were looking at. But maybe they'd increased their budget. Maybe their financial situation had improved. I went to see the house the following weekend. It was beautiful. Newly renovated kitchen, hardwood floors, big windows with lots of natural light. The backyard was huge, perfect for kids. Emma and Lucas were running around, already claiming their bedrooms. This one's mine, Grandma. It has a window seat. It's perfect for them, Juliet said, watching the kids. This is where they'll grow up, where they'll have birthday parties and sleepovers and make memories. It's a lovely house, I agreed. We put in an offer, Preston said, and it was accepted. We're closing in 6 weeks. Congratulations, that's wonderful news. They were excited. The kids were excited. Everyone was happy. Then 2 weeks later, Preston called. His voice was different, tense. Mom, can Juliet and I come over tomorrow? We need to talk to you about something. Of course. Is everything okay? Yeah, everything's fine. We just need to discuss something in person. They arrived the next afternoon, Saturday. The kids weren't with them, unusual for a weekend visit. We sat in my living room, coffee and cookies on the table that nobody touched. So, I said, what did you want to talk about? Preston looked at Juliet. She looked at him. Some silent communication passed between them. Then Juliet pulled a folder from her bag. We need to ask you a favor. A big favor. Okay. The mortgage. We're having a small issue with it. My stomach tightened. What kind of issue? Our lender called, Preston said. Because of some credit things from a few years ago, our interest rate is higher than we thought, like significantly higher. How much higher? The monthly payment would be around $300 to $400, which is more than we can comfortably afford. $3,400 a month. On what income? I wanted to ask, but I stayed quiet. So we talked to the lender, Juliet continued, and he said if we had a co-signer, someone with good credit and stable income, we could get a much better rate. The payment would drop to around $2,800. And you want me to co-sign? Just for the better interest rate, Preston said quickly. We'll be making all the payments. You won't have to pay anything. We just need your name on the paperwork to qualify for the lower rate. I looked at the folder Juliet was holding. Mortgage application, pre-approval letters, documents that would legally bind me to a $400,000 debt. Let me make sure I understand, I said carefully. You want me to co-sign a $400,000 mortgage so you can get a lower interest rate? Exactly, Juliet said, smiling like I'd agreed. It's really just a formality. The lender needs a co-signer for approval, but we'll be paying everything. You're just helping us qualify. If I co-sign, I'm legally responsible for the debt. If you can't make the payments, the bank comes after me. We'll make the payments, Preston said. We're both working. We have stable jobs. There's no reason we wouldn't be able to pay. Then why do you need a co-signer? Silence. The lender requires it, Juliet finally said, because of Preston's credit history. What credit history? Preston looked uncomfortable. I had some credit card debt a few years ago. Before we got married, I paid it off, but it's still on my record. And there was a medical bill that went to collections because I didn't realize insurance hadn't covered it. It's all resolved now, but it's affecting our credit score. Debt, collections, red flags everywhere. What about your income? I asked. Can you afford a $2,800 monthly payment? Yes, Juliet said firmly. I'm making $72,000 a year. Preston makes $68,000. Combined, we make $140,000. We can definitely afford it. $140,000 a year. $2,800 a month for housing. That was 24% of their gross income. Not terrible, but tight, especially with 2 kids. What about your other expenses? Daycare, car payments, student loans? We've budgeted for everything, Juliet said. Daycare is $1,800 a month. We have 2 car payments totaling $900. Student loans are $400. Utilities and everything else, maybe another $1,000. We've done the math. We can afford this. I did the math too, in my head, fast. $20,800 mortgage, $1,800 daycare, $900 cars, $400 student loans, $1,000 other expenses. That was $6,900 a month in fixed expenses. On $140,000 a year, their take-home after taxes was probably around $8,500 a month. That left $2,600 for food, gas, clothing, medical expenses, entertainment, savings. For a family of 4. Tight. Really tight. Have you considered a smaller house? I asked. Something more affordable? We looked at smaller houses, Juliet said. they're not in good school districts, or they need major work. For just a little more, we get this house, which is perfect for our family. A little more, that required a co-signer because they couldn't qualify on their own. Mom, Preston said, I know this is a lot to ask, but this house is important to us. To Emma and Lucas, they deserve a good home in a safe neighborhood with good schools. Of course they do, but they also deserve parents who aren't stretched so thin financially that they're stressed all the time. We won't be stressed, Juliet said. We'll be happy, in our own home, building equity instead of throwing money away on rent. The classic argument, rent is throwing money away, even when buying a house you can't quite afford. I need to think about this, I said. Juliet's smile faltered. What's there to think about? We're just asking you to co-sign. You won't have to pay anything. If I co-sign, I'm legally responsible. If something happens, if one of you loses a job, if there's an emergency, if you can't make a payment, the bank will come after me. That's not nothing. Nothing's going to happen, Preston said. We've been responsible. We pay our bills. There's no reason to think we wouldn't pay the mortgage. Except you had debt that went to collections and credit issues, and now you're asking me to take on the risk the bank won't take. Preston flinched. That's not fair. It's accurate. The bank won't give you the rate you want because they see you as a risk. You're asking me to absorb that risk. You're our mother, Juliet said. Her voice had changed, harder. This is your grandchildren's future we're talking about. I'm aware. Are you? Because it seems like you're more worried about protecting yourself than helping your family. The words hit like a slap. Juliet, Preston started. No, Preston. I'm going to say this. Your mother has the means to help us. She owns her house outright. She has retirement savings. She has good credit. She could help us get this house where her grandchildren will live, and she's acting like we're asking her to donate a kidney. I'm asking for time to think about a major financial decision, I said, keeping my voice calm. That's reasonable. What's there to think about? Do you want Emma and Lucas to grow up in a nice house or not? Of course I do. Then sign the paperwork. She pushed the folder across the coffee table toward me. Help your son. Help your grandchildren. I looked at the folder, at the documents that would make me responsible for $400,000 in debt. Debt for a house that Preston and Juliet could barely afford, even with my signature. I need to review these documents, I said. Talk to my financial advisor. Make sure I understand what I'm agreeing to. There's nothing to understand, Juliet said, frustration clear in her voice. You're co-signing. That's it. Juliet, that's not how this works. I'm not signing anything without understanding the full implications. She sat back, crossed her arms. Fine. How long do you need? A few days, maybe a week. We close in 4 weeks. We need your answer soon. I'll give you an answer within a week. They left shortly after. Preston hugged me at the door. Thanks, Mom, for considering it. Juliet didn't hug me. Just walked to the car. After they left, I sat down with the documents, read through every page, every clause, every piece of fine print. Co-signing meant I was equally responsible for the mortgage. If Preston and Juliet missed a payment, it went on my credit. If they defaulted, I'd be liable for the full amount, and I'd have no control. No say in whether they paid on time. No ability to make sure they were managing their money responsibly. I'd be trusting them completely, trusting that they wouldn't lose their jobs, that they wouldn't overspend, that they wouldn't run into financial trouble and leave me holding the bag. That was a lot of trust for people who'd already had debt go to collections. I called my financial advisor, explained the situation. "Don't do it," he said immediately. "Co-signing is one of the biggest financial mistakes people make. You're taking on all the risk with none of the benefit. But they're my family, my son, my grandchildren. I understand. But Sylvia, if they can't qualify for this mortgage on their own, there's a reason. The bank, whose job it is to assess financial risk, doesn't think they can handle it. Why would you take on risk that a bank won't take? They say they can afford it. Everyone says they can afford it until they can't. What happens if one of them loses their job? What happens if they have a medical emergency? What happens if the housing market crashes and they owe more than the house is worth? They'd stop paying and I'd be liable." "Exactly. And at 69 years old with a fixed income, can you afford to take on a $400,000 mortgage?" The answer was no. Of course no. My house was paid off. I had retirement savings and a pension. I was comfortable. But I couldn't afford a $2,800 monthly mortgage payment, not without significantly impacting my quality of life. "So what do? I asked. Say no and ruin my relationship with my son? That's not what you'd be doing. You'd be protecting your financial security. If Preston and Juliet love you, they'll understand that. If they don't, then you know where you stand." I spent 3 days thinking about it, agonizing over it. I wanted to help. I did. I wanted Emma and Lucas to have a nice house with a backyard. I wanted Preston and Juliet to achieve their dream of home ownership, but I couldn't afford to sacrifice my financial security for their dream. I couldn't risk my retirement, my stability, my peace of mind, so I made my decision. I called Preston and asked him and Juliet to come over, without the kids this time. They arrived looking hopeful, like they assumed my answer would be yes. We sat in the living room again, same seats as before. "I've reviewed the documents," I said, "and I've talked to my financial advisor. And?" Juliet leaned forward. "I can't co-sign the mortgage." The temperature in the room dropped. "What?" Preston's voice was small, disbelieving. "I can't take on that level of financial risk. If something happened and you couldn't make the payments, I'd be responsible. At my age, with a fixed income, I can't afford that." "Nothing's going to happen," Juliet said sharply. "We've told you that. You believe that, but you can't guarantee it. No one can." "So you're saying no?" "Not a question, an accusation. I'm saying I can't co-sign. I'm sorry." "You're not sorry," Juliet said. "If you were sorry, you'd help us." "Juliet, I want to help, but co-signing a mortgage isn't help. It's taking on debt and risk I can't afford." "You can afford it. You have money. You own your house. You have savings, which I need for my retirement, for my future. I can't risk that." Preston looked devastated. "Mom, this was our dream house. Emma and Lucas were so excited. We told them they were going to have their own rooms, a backyard to play in. You told them before you knew you could afford it." "We thought we could, with your help." "Preston, you can't afford this house, even with me co-signing. The bank knows that. That's why they're requiring a co-signer." "That's not true," Juliet said. "We can afford it. We've done the math." "Then why do you need a co-signer?" "For the better interest rate. We've explained this. Banks don't require co-signers just for better rates. They require them because they don't think you can handle the payment on your own. That's not... Juliet stopped, took a breath. When she spoke again, her voice was different, controlled, but cold. Let me ask you something, Sylvia. Do you want to be part of your grandchildren's lives? The question froze me. What? Do you want to be part of Emma and Lucas's lives? Watch them grow up? Be their grandmother? Of course I do. That's not... Because real grandmothers help their families. Real grandmothers make sacrifices for their grandchildren. They don't put their money before their family. I'm not putting money before family, aren't you? We're asking for your help, for Emma and Lucas, and you're saying no because you're worried about your precious retirement account. Juliet, that's not fair. What's not fair is having a grandmother who has the means to help but won't. What's not fair is telling two little kids they can't have the house we promised them because Grandma wouldn't sign a piece of paper. A piece of paper that makes me responsible for $400,000 in debt. That will pay. Why don't you trust us? This isn't about trust. It is about trust. You don't trust us to pay our mortgage. You don't trust your own son. Preston had been quiet. Now he spoke. Mom, please reconsider. We need this. The kids need this. Preston, find a house you can afford without a co-signer. There are other houses. Not like this one. Not in good school districts. Not where we want to raise our kids. Then save more money. Improve your credit. Wait a year and reapply when you're in a better position. We don't want to wait a year. Juliet stood up. We found our house, our perfect house. And you could help us get it, but you're choosing not to. I'm choosing to protect my financial security. You're choosing yourself over your grandchildren. She looked at me with something close to contempt. Real grandmas don't say no to their grandchildren's future, but I guess we know what kind of grandma you are. The words were designed to hurt, and they did. Preston stood too. He wouldn't look at me. Let's go, Juliet. Preston, I started. We need to figure out what to do now, since you've made your decision. I'm sorry, I truly am, but I can't do this. You mean you won't? They left. I stood at my door watching them drive away and felt the weight of what had just happened. I'd said no to my son, to my grandchildren's future, and according to Juliet, that made me a bad grandmother. I went inside, sat on my couch, and cried. Not because I regretted my decision, but because of what it had cost me. The next few weeks were painful. Preston didn't call, didn't text, didn't return my calls when I tried to reach him. I didn't hear anything about the house, whether they'd found another solution, whether they were still buying it. Sunday dinners stopped. When I asked Preston if they were coming, he made excuses. Busy. Emma had a thing. Lucas wasn't feeling well. 3 weeks after our conversation, my sister called. Have you talked to Preston lately? No, why? I saw on Facebook they bought the house, closed last week. My stomach dropped. How? I don't know. Maybe they found another co-signer, or maybe the bank approved them without one. Another co-signer. Juliet's parents, probably. They had money, they'd co-sign. I should have felt relieved. They got their house. Problem solved. Instead, I felt discarded. Like I'd been their first option, and when I said no, they'd moved on, found someone else to do what I wouldn't. I tried calling Preston. No answer. I texted. Heard you closed on the house. Congratulations, would love to see you and the kids soon. No response. Days passed. Then a week, then 2 weeks. Finally, a text from Preston. Short, cold. Thanks. We're busy with the move. We'll let you know when we're settled. That was it. No invitation, no update, no warmth. I'd said no, and now I was being punished. A month passed, then 2 months. I barely heard from Preston. When I did see Emma and Lucas, brief encounters at family gatherings that Preston couldn't avoid, they were different with me. Distant, like they'd been told something. Grandma didn't want to help us get our house. I could imagine Juliet saying. She said no when we needed her. At a family birthday party, Emma asked me, "Grandma, why didn't you want us to have our new house?" The question broke my heart. Sweetheart, I did want you to have a house. I just couldn't help in the way Mommy and Daddy wanted. But Grandma Pat helped. Mommy said Grandma Pat is a real grandma because she helped. Grandma Pat, Juliet's mother, who'd apparently co-signed the mortgage. "I'm a real grandma too," I said quietly. "I love you very much." "Then why did you say no?" I didn't know how to explain co-signing and financial risk to a 6-year-old. "Sometimes grown-ups have to make hard decisions," I said, "even when they want to help." She didn't understand. How could she? Preston overheard the conversation, pulled Emma away. "Let's go find your brother." He didn't look at me. I left the party early, went home, sat in my quiet house that I owned outright, the house that represented my financial security, and wondered if I'd made the biggest mistake of my life. 3 months after they bought the house, I got a call from Preston. First time he'd actually called in months. "Mom, Preston, it's good to hear from you. Can I come over? I need to talk to you about something." "Of course. When?" "Now, if that's okay." "It's fine. Come over." He arrived 20 minutes later, alone. He looked stressed, exhausted. We sat in the living room, the same place where this whole thing had started. "How's the house?" I asked. "It's good. Great. The kids love it." "I'm glad." Silence. Heavy silence. "Mom, I need to tell you something, and I need you not to be angry." My stomach tightened. "Okay. The mortgage. It's higher than we thought it would be." "How much higher?" "Juliet's parents co-signed, but because of some timing issues with the closing, the rate didn't come down as much as we'd hoped. It's $3,100 a month instead of $2,800. $3,100. Even more than they'd told me originally." "Can you afford that?" "Barely. We're stretched really thin. We had to put the closing costs on credit cards because we didn't have enough saved. And the house needed some immediate repairs. AC unit died the first week. That was $6,000 we didn't budget for." "Preston, I know what you're going to say, that we couldn't afford the house, that we should have waited, that we should have listened to you. I'm not going to say that. What's done is done. It's just really hard right now. And Juliet is stressed, and the kids sense it, and I don't know what to do." I looked at my son, at the stress lines around his eyes, at the exhaustion in his shoulders. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked quietly. "Because I need to know. Would you have helped if we'd been honest about how tight things were? If we'd told you we were putting closing costs on credit cards, that we didn't have any emergency fund?" "No." The word hung between us. "Even knowing how hard it is now?" "Especially knowing how hard it is now. Preston, you bought a house you can't afford. Adding me to that situation wouldn't have helped. It just would have put me at risk too. So you don't regret saying no?" "I regret how it affected our relationship. I regret that Emma thinks I'm not a real grandma. I regret that you've barely spoken to me in 3 months." But no, I don't regret protecting my financial security. Juliet's still angry at you. I know. She says you chose money over family. I chose not to take on debt I couldn't afford. There's a difference. Preston looked down. I think we made a mistake. The house? The house, listening to Juliet, pushing you, all of it. Finally he was seeing it. What are you going to do? I asked. I don't know. We can't sell. We'd lose money. We're stuck with it. We just have to figure out how to make it work. Can you? I hope so. Preston, if you can't, don't wait until you're drowning to ask for help. Don't let pride or embarrassment keep you in a bad situation. Are you saying you'll help now? No, I'm saying get professional help, a financial advisor, a credit counselor, someone who can help you create a plan that doesn't involve borrowing more money. He nodded slowly. Okay. And Preston, I love you. I love Emma and Lucas. Nothing changes that, even when we disagree about money. I know, Mom, and I'm sorry for how Juliet treated you, for not talking to you for months, for letting Emma say those things. It's okay. It's not, but thank you. He left shortly after. I watched him drive away to the house that was already causing him stress, and I knew my decision had been the right one, even if it had cost me months of relationship with my son, even if my granddaughter thought I wasn't a real grandma, because real grandmas protect themselves so they can actually be there for their grandchildren, not just as a name on a mortgage, but as a stable, secure presence in their lives. That was worth saying no for. Things didn't get better after Preston's visit. They got worse. Over the next few months, I barely saw Emma and Lucas. When I did, it was awkward, forced. Like Preston was fulfilling an obligation rather than wanting me around. Juliet avoided me completely. At family gatherings, she'd stay on the other side of the room. If I tried to talk to her, she'd give one-word answers and walk away. I was being punished for saying no, for not being a real grandma. 6 months after they bought the house, my sister invited me to lunch. I'm worried about Preston, she said over salad. Why? He looks terrible, like he's not sleeping. And I heard from Aunt Marie that they're having money problems. How does Aunt Marie know that? She ran into Juliet at the grocery store. Juliet was using coupons for everything, apparently, which isn't bad, but Marie said she seemed stressed about it. Kept calculating the total as she went. Using coupons, calculating totals. Signs of financial stress in someone who'd never had to budget before. Did Marie say anything else? Just that Juliet mentioned money being tight, that they'd underestimated how expensive homeownership was. I wasn't surprised. They'd bought at the top of their budget with no emergency fund. Of course they were struggling. Have you talked to Preston about it? My sister asked. He came by a few months ago, admitted things were tight, but he hasn't said anything since. Maybe you should reach out. And say what? I told him not to buy the house. He bought it anyway. Now he's dealing with the consequences. He's your son. And he's an adult who made his choice. I'm not going to chase him down to say I told you so. That's not what I'm suggesting. I'm suggesting you check in, see if he's okay. I thought about it. Pride said no, they'd shut me out, let them figure it out. But love said yes, he's my son, regardless of our disagreements. I texted Preston that evening. How are you doing? Haven't heard from you in a while. He responded 3 hours later. Busy. Work is crazy. Kids are good. Generic. Distant. Not inviting further conversation. I let it go. 2 more months passed. 8 months since they'd bought the house. I was at the grocery store when I saw Juliet. She saw me, too. For a second, I thought she might turn around and leave. But she didn't. She came down the aisle toward me. Sylvia. Juliet. How are you? Fine. She looked tired. Her hair, usually perfectly styled, was pulled into a messy ponytail. No makeup. Yoga pants and a sweatshirt. How's the house? It's fine. We stood there awkwardly, neither of us knowing what to say. How are Emma and Lucas? I asked. They're good. They love their rooms, the backyard. I'm glad. More silence. Sylvia, I need to ask you something. Juliet's voice was quiet, strained. Okay. If we told you the truth, that we were putting closing costs on credit cards, that we had no emergency fund, that we were stretching ourselves to the absolute limit, would you have tried to stop us? The question caught me off guard. Yes, I said honestly. I would have tried to talk you out of it. Even though it would have made us angry? Even then. She looked away. Maybe you should have tried harder. Juliet, you told me to stay out of your life. You told me I wasn't a real grandma because I wouldn't co-sign. What was I supposed to do? I don't know. Something. Her voice cracked. We're drowning, Sylvia. Completely drowning. The mortgage is killing us. We have $15,000 in credit card debt from the closing costs and repairs. Last month, our second car broke down, and we had to put $2,000 worth of repairs on another card. We're barely making minimum payments. I don't know how much longer we can keep this up. She was crying now, right there in the grocery store. This woman who'd called me selfish, who'd said I wasn't a real grandma, who'd frozen me out for 8 months. Have you talked to Preston about this? He knows. We fight about it constantly. He took a second job delivering food at night just to cover the credit card payments. I had to go back to work full-time after wanting to stay part-time with the kids. We're both exhausted and stressed, and the kids can feel it. What about Juliet's parents? The ones who co-signed? Her face hardened. They don't know. They can't know. They think everything is fine. They're on the mortgage. If you stop paying, it affects them too. We're not going to stop paying. We're making the payments. Barely, but we are. At what cost? Your health? Your marriage? Your relationship with your kids? What choice do we have? We bought the house. We're stuck with it. You're not stuck. You could sell and lose money? We'd owe more than it's worth right now. We can't sell. She was right. They'd bought at the peak of the market. Housing prices had started to drop. They'd be underwater on the mortgage. Then what do you want from me? I don't know. She wiped her eyes. Maybe I just needed to say it out loud. That you were right, that we should have listened. Juliet, I was so mean to you. I said terrible things. I told Emma you weren't a real grandma because you wouldn't help us. I poisoned Preston against you. And now I see that you were trying to protect us and yourself, and I didn't want to hear it. This was the closest to an apology I was going to get. What can I do to help? I asked. Nothing. There's nothing anyone can do. We made our bed. Now we're lying in it. There's always something. You could refinance if rates drop. You could rent out a room. You could create a strict budget and attack the credit card debt. We have a budget. We're trying. It's just not enough. Have you considered talking to a financial advisor? Someone who specializes in debt management? We can't afford a financial advisor. There are free services, nonprofits that help people in your situation. I'll mention it to Preston. She started to walk away, then stopped. Sylvia, I know I don't have the right to ask this, but can you not tell anyone about this? The money problems? If my parents find out, I won't say anything. Thank you. She walked away. I stood there with my half-full cart, processing what had just happened. Juliet had finally admitted the truth, finally acknowledged that I'd been right, but there was no satisfaction in it, just sadness. For Preston, for Juliet, for Emma and Lucas, who were growing up in a house their parents couldn't afford. That evening, I called Preston. "Mom, hi, I'm at work." "Your second job, delivering food," Juliet told me. Silence. "She ran into you at the grocery store. She told me everything, how bad things are financially. She shouldn't have done that." "Preston, I'm not calling to judge you. I'm calling because I'm worried. We're handling it." "Are you?" "Juliet said you're drowning in credit card debt, that you're both working constantly, that you're fighting." Every couple fights about money. Not like this. Not when it's affecting your health and your marriage and your kids. "What do you want me to say, Mom? That you were right?" "Fine. You were right. We couldn't afford the house. We should have listened to you. Happy?" "No, I'm not happy. I'm heartbroken that you're going through this." He was quiet for a long moment. "I don't know what to do. I've done the math 100 times. Even with both of us working, even with my second job, we're barely keeping our heads above water. And I'm so tired. I'm working 16-hour days. I barely see Emma and Lucas. When I am home, Juliet and I are fighting about bills. This isn't what I wanted." "What did you want?" "I wanted to give my kids a good home, a stable life. Instead, I gave them stressed parents in a house we can't afford. Preston, you need to make a change. This isn't sustainable." "I know, but what change? We can't sell. We'd lose everything." "Can you rent out part of the house?" "Maybe. Juliet doesn't want strangers living with us, but maybe we don't have a choice." "Have you talked to anyone? A financial advisor, credit counselor?" "No." "Why not?" "Pride, I guess. Embarrassment. I'm a grown man who can't manage his own finances. How pathetic is that?" "It's not pathetic. It's human. Lots of people get in over their heads. The difference is whether you get help or let it destroy you. And you think I should get help. I think you should explore all your options. Talk to professionals. Figure out if there's a way to make this work without killing yourself." "Okay, I'll look into it." "Preston, I love you. I want to help. But I can't do that by taking on your debt. I can help you find resources. I can help you think through options. But I can't fix this for you. I know, and I'm sorry for how I acted after you said no, for shutting you out, for letting Juliet say those things about you to Emma. You were trying to protect yourself and us, and I made you the villain. You were disappointed. I understand. Still, I'm sorry. I forgive you." We talked for another hour about possible solutions, about financial counseling services, about how to prioritize debt payoff, about whether renting out a room was feasible. It wasn't fixing everything, but it was a start. Over the next few months, Preston and Juliet made changes. They rented out their guest bedroom to a nursing student. $800 a month. It helped. They followed a strict budget, cut cable, canceled subscriptions, stopped eating out entirely. Preston kept his second job. Juliet took on freelance work from home. They met with a credit counselor who helped them consolidate their credit card debt and create a payment plan. It was working. Slowly. The credit card balances were going down. They were building a small emergency fund, but the cost was high. Preston looked exhausted all the time. Juliet was stressed and irritable. Emma and Lucas were acting out, behavior problems at school, tantrums at home. They sense something's wrong, Preston told me. They know we're stressed even if they don't understand why. Maybe it's time to tell them the truth, age appropriately, that you're working hard to make things better. And admit we made a mistake? Kids are resilient. They can handle the truth better than they can handle tension and secrecy. He considered it. Maybe you're right. 3 weeks later, Preston called with an update. We talked to Emma and Lucas, explained that we bought a house that was more expensive than we realized, that we're working extra to pay for it, that things are tight for a while but we're figuring it out. How did they take it? Better than expected. Emma asked if we were poor. I said no, just being careful with money. Lucas asked if that's why we don't go to restaurants anymore. I said yes. And they were okay with it? They seemed relieved, actually, like they'd sensed something was wrong and it was better to know what it was. That's good, Preston. Yeah. And Sylvia? They asked about you. Why they don't see you as much anymore. I told them that was my fault, that I'd been upset with you about something, but it wasn't your fault. You didn't have to do that. Yes, I did. Emma thinks you're not a real grandma because of what Juliet said. I need to fix that. How? By bringing them over more. By letting you be their grandmother. If that's okay with you, it's more than okay. Things improved. Gradually, I started seeing Emma and Lucas regularly again. Weekly visits, Saturday morning pancakes, bedtime stories when I babysat. Juliet was cordial, not warm, but not hostile. We were civil. That was enough. A year after they bought the house, Preston came over for coffee. Just him. I need to tell you something, he said. Okay. Juliet's parents found out about the financial problems. Someone from the mortgage company called them about late payment. We were 10 days late one month, and they found out we'd been struggling. How did they react? Badly. They're angry we didn't tell them. Angry we let it get so bad. They're talking about refinancing to get their names off the mortgage. Can they do that? If we refinance on our own, yes, but that would require better credit and stable finances, which we're working toward but aren't there yet. What happens if they do refinance out? Our rate goes back up. The payment goes from $3,100 to probably $3,500, which we definitely can't afford. So you're stuck. For now, unless we sell and take the loss. Are you considering that? He sighed. Every day. But Juliet doesn't want to. She says we just need more time. That we're making progress. Are you? Yes. But I'm also exhausted. I've been working 2 jobs for over a year. I never see my kids. My marriage is strained. I keep asking myself if this house is worth it. What's your answer? I don't know yet. We sat in silence for a moment. Preston, can I say something without you getting angry? Yeah. Sell the house. He looked at me. Sell it. Take the loss. Start over. Find something you can actually afford, something that doesn't require 2 jobs and constant stress. We'd lose at least $30,000 if we sold now. How much are you losing in quality of life, in health, in relationship with your kids, in peace of mind? What's that worth? Juliet will never agree. Then you need to decide what's more important, the house or everything else. He left shortly after. I didn't know if he'd take my advice. 2 months later, I got a call from Preston. "We're selling the house." "You are?" Juliet finally agreed. Last week, Emma had a breakdown because she never sees me. She said she missed her daddy, and Juliet realized we were sacrificing our family for a house. That's a big realization. "Yeah, so we're listing it next week. We'll probably lose $35,000 after everything, but we're okay with it." "What's the plan after?" "Rent for a while, something affordable. Build up savings, work on our credit. In a few years, maybe we'll buy again, something smaller, something we can actually afford." "That sounds smart. It's what you told us to do from the beginning. We should have listened." "You weren't ready to hear it then." "No, but I am now." They sold the house 3 months later, lost $37,000 between the selling price and what they owed. But Preston quit his second job. They moved into a 3-bedroom rental for $12,200 a month, started rebuilding their savings. Preston looked healthier, less stressed. Juliet smiled more. Emma and Lucas adjusted quickly. "Our new house is smaller but happier," Emma told me one day. 6 months after they sold, Preston and Juliet came over for dinner. Just the 4 of us. The kids were with Juliet's parents. "We wanted to thank you," Juliet said. I was surprised. "For what?" "For saying no when we asked you to co-sign. You were right. We couldn't afford that house. And if you'd co-signed, we'd have dragged you into our disaster." "You're not a disaster." "We were heading toward one, and you saw it. You tried to warn us, and we didn't listen." "You weren't ready to hear it." "No, but you were right to say it anyway." Preston spoke up. "Mom, I've been thinking a lot about what you said, about being a real grandma, and you were right about that, too." "What do you mean?" "Juliet said real grandmas don't say no, but the truth is, real grandmas do what's best for their grandchildren, even when it's hard, even when it makes people angry. You said no because you knew we were making a mistake. You said no because you wanted to be stable and secure for Emma and Lucas long term. That's what real grandmas do." I felt tears prick my eyes. "Thank you for saying that." "I'm sorry it took me so long to see it." "You see it now. That's what matters." We talked late into the night about their plans, about rebuilding, about what they'd learned. "I never want to be that stressed again," Preston said. "Never want to work myself to exhaustion for a house I can't afford." "Then don't," I said simply. "Live below your means. Save. Be patient. And when you're ready to buy again, buy something that allows you to live, not just survive." "We will." It's been 2 years now since they sold the house. Preston and Juliet are still renting. They've saved $60,000. Their credit has improved significantly. They're looking at houses again. But this time, they're looking at $280,000 homes instead of $425,000. They're being realistic about what they can afford. Preston has a new job with better pay. Juliet got promoted. They're in a much better financial position. And I see Emma and Lucas all the time. Weekly dinners, Saturday adventures, bedtime stories. Emma no longer questions whether I'm a real grandma. She just knows I'm her grandma, the one who loves her and shows up and is there. Last week, Preston called with news. "We put an offer on a house, 3 bedrooms, good school district, $295,000. We can actually afford it." That's wonderful. "And Mom, we're not asking you to co-sign. We qualified on our own. Good credit, solid income, healthy down payment. We did it the right way this time." "I'm so proud of you." "We couldn't have gotten here without you saying no. without you forcing us to face reality. So thank you for being the kind of grandma who says no when no is the right answer. I cried when we hung up, happy tears this time. People ask me sometimes if I regret how everything happened, if I wish I'd just co-signed to avoid the conflict. The answer is no. If I'd co-signed, Preston and Juliet would have stayed in that house, would have kept struggling, would have spent years stressed and exhausted. They might have eventually defaulted, destroying their credit and mine. Or they might have survived, but at tremendous cost to their health, marriage, and relationship with their kids. By saying no, I forced them to confront reality, to face the fact that they couldn't afford that house. It was painful. It damaged our relationship for a while. It made me the villain in their story. But it was the right thing to do. Because real grandmas don't just say yes to make people happy. Real grandmas protect their grandchildren's future by making hard decisions, by saying no when necessary, by staying financially stable so they can be a resource, not a burden. That's what I did, and I'd do it again. Even if it meant hearing those words, real grandmas don't say no, because sometimes real grandmas do. What would you do if this happened to you? Tell me in the comments. I always read them. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more true life stories like mine.